This happened about 6 months ago. I was leaving a work function at a bar around midnight in a large city about an hour away from the suburban home I share with my partner. For reference, I'm a woman in my mid-20s with an average build, not tall, not strong, definitely not threatening in any way, and I was a bit buzzed that night. I'm talking like 3 drinks, so not incapacitated in the slightest. Anyway, I'd ordinarily take a company car home, but I hadn't reserved one since I didn't know what time I'd be leaving, so I just decided to Uber. The company reimburses me for the bill anyway, so it was no difference to me. Once the Uber pulls up, I say goodbye to my colleagues and get in the back seat. I'm always very nice to my Uber drivers, so I introduce myself. This driver, let's call him Ed, since I don't actually know his real name, seemed totally normal. No red flags, and we make pleasant conversation for about 15 minutes until we are squarely out of the city on the way to the suburbs. From this pleasant conversation, I learn he lives in a certain neighborhood not far from my home. Note that his neighborhood, while relatively nearby, would be completely out of the way on the route we are taking to my home. The conversation reaches its natural end, so I just stay a bit quiet and start looking at my phone. The quiet is interrupted by his voice, suggesting I take a nap if I feel tired. It didn't even strike me as weird at first, so I just thanked him for the offer, but I wasn't that tired. He then said, "Oh, I always get sleepy when I'm drunk. Are you sure?" At this point, something in my body made me even more wide awake than before. I replied that I wasn't drunk, and like I had said, I just had a few drinks, so no need to nap. I'll be home soon enough anyway. He drops it after that, but I still thought it was weird he'd say that. About 5 minutes later, he says that the highway has some weird construction going on, and that the single lane traffic ahead would make my trip way longer than it needs to be. He asks if it's okay to take another route. I oblige, already on edge and just wanting to be at home. My partner calls at that moment, asking when I'll be home, and I make sure to make it very clear I was talking to my significant other. Something was weird about this guy, and I wanted him to know that someone is expecting me at a specific time and knows where I am. After I hang up the phone, the Uber driver stays quiet and we get off the highway on a different exit than I've ever used, but I guess that's to be expected on a different route home. I'm on my phone because I don't want to talk to this guy anymore, not even looking up until he says my house is only 5 minutes from here. Okay, pit in my stomach. I'm probably a good 25 minutes away from my house right now. I say some nonsense about how I like the neighborhood and how my boyfriend and I were thinking of moving here instead. Blah blah, basically anything I can think of to make it seem like I don't think this is weird and I'm not picking up on any signals. Surprisingly, he doesn't say anything in response and now starts driving on a road in a direction I knew led to my house. Phew, crisis averted, right? Except not really. 15 minutes to go and my surroundings are more familiar. Just as I'm starting to feel more at ease, he starts asking questions about my boyfriend. What does he do? How long have you guys been together? And other seemingly normal questions. Finally, with about 10 minutes to go, he asks if my boyfriend makes me happy. He does, very much, so I gush a bit and say, yes, he makes me very happy. Then he asks if I make him happy. I thought that was weird, but humor is my defense mechanism, so I say, well, I should hope so. 8 minutes away, he turns onto a side street and pulls over on the side of the road, looks back at me over his headrest and asks if I'd make him happy too. I said, what? Mostly because I can't even believe what's happening. He asks again, do you want to make me happy tonight? I took a second to think through my options. I'm alone with this guy who's behind the wheel. The street is dark and I don't see any lights on at any nearby houses. Close to 1 a.m. at this point on a weeknight, and I don't know what the hell this guy has in the car. I default to the response many women know to be the true barrier to men's advances. I don't think my boyfriend would like that very much. His weird grin falls away from his face and he says, he doesn't have to find out. Come on, make me happy. I know a few ways you can start. I tell him my boyfriend is expecting me home any minute, and besides, I love him. I don't want to hurt him. Can you please just take me home? I carry a small knife and a little canister of mace, but all I could think of was to appeal to this guy's sensitive side. Somehow it worked and he didn't say another word after that, just turned back around and silently drove me home. Weirdly enough, I say thanks as I get out of the car. Old habits die hard, I guess. And that was that. I go into my house and start crying immediately for some reason as soon as I hug my partner. He tells me I need to contact Uber immediately and tell them what happened so that this guy doesn't try to take advantage of anyone else. I agree and pull up the app to file the complaint. Except when I looked at my last ride, the picture in the profile was 100% not the same guy who drove me home. The car was the same, but not the driver. The guy in the photo was maybe early 40s. The guy who drove me home seemed just a bit older than me. Uber never followed up with me and just refunded my money. I did tell the police what happened because my partner insisted, but they didn't take me seriously since nothing actually happened. I was worried for a while since this guy knew where I lived, but apparently it's long forgotten since I just took an Uber today. Moral of the story: always make sure the photo in your Uber's driver's profile matches the person who's driving the car.
I don't drink as a general rule, but once a month or so I'll go out with some friends and binge. My friends and I had a great night at a bar in the city, and after a while they eventually left. I was chatting up a cute girl, so I decided to stay. I went back to her place, and after a bit I was ready to head home. I called an Uber to pick me up, but I didn't know where I was. I knew the city I was in, but not my exact location. So I ordered the Uber, but it felt like it was taking forever. It just kept saying requesting, over and over again, so I canceled it and tried again. Pretty soon a car pulls up. I drunkenly mumble, "Is this the Uber?" And I hop in. I found out later that Ubers apparently are supposed to have some kind of marking on the vehicle. The guy pulls away and starts driving. We're chatting, I'm fumbling for a cigarette, and next thing I noticed, we're headed on the highway. We're going at a solid 90 miles per hour. I then get a call from my Uber driver. I answer and he says he's there. But I'm not because I'm in a car with some strange man. I tell him to pull over, but he doesn't even acknowledge me. I start texting my friend frantically, counting off mile markers for her. Then I realize that's going to do jack, because she's probably drunk too. So I called 911, but I realize this man's crazy. He's refusing to let me out of the car, so I've got to do it on the sly. It'd been 40 minutes now and he wouldn't pull over. I was terrified. I didn't know where I was and I didn't know who he was. He's speeding and weaving in and out of traffic. This guy was trying to get me to hang up my phone. He says to me, "Yo, get off the phone. The fuck are you calling?" I also noticed he was smoking out of some sort of glass pipe, so I didn't want to do anything that might provoke a violent reaction from him. I started chatting to the 911 dispatcher as if it's my friend, praying that he'll catch on. I said to him, "Hey, it's me. Yeah, I'm with someone right now. We're driving past Highway X. No, it's not my Uber driver. I thought it was, but it's not. It's a shame you can't come and meet me and bring friends." Thank God the operator catches on. He gets me to stay on the phone while he sends cops. And we develop a code. If I see cops, I'm supposed to casually put my hand out the window, which looks semi-normal because I was smoking a cigarette. We pull into some random little housing complex and he busts out some powder, forms 2 lines, and I had confirmation that he did drugs, which means he's probably emotionally volatile. I relay this to the operator in code. I say to him, "Oh man, I wish you were here right now. This guy just blasted out some coke. You'd love it." Pretty soon I could see the lights from the cop cars, so I start waving my hand out the window. At this point I didn't care if he was onto me or not. I didn't know if he had a weapon, but I slumped down in my seat just in case things got hot. The cops surrounded us, got him out of the car, and then they grabbed me as well. They whisked me to the hospital for a drug test and an evaluation. And that's where my story ends. I found out later that the guy's a known criminal, and I was lucky to be alive.
So I've just been reminiscing with a friend about our trip to San Francisco 3 years ago. There were 3 of us, in America for the first time. We went to a bear pong tournament organized by our hostel and headed to a bar afterwards with a bunch of people who grouped together. One guy seemed to know the area well and suggested we move on to another street which had a row of clubs on it. I forget the name now, but we'd met some guys the previous night who mentioned the same street, so it stuck in my head thankfully. We ordered about 6 Ubers and everybody jumped in. A solo guy who tagged along with the group ended up sharing with us as the three of us didn't want to split up. He spoke to the driver before we got in and waited for us to get in the back. He then proceeded to our horror to squeeze in the back seat with us. I don't know why the taxi driver let him do this. At this point, we just laughed it off and told him to get in the front, but he said, "It's okay," and we started moving. After a while, I realized we were back by our hostel. This was weird because I knew the area we were heading to was in the complete opposite direction. I asked the cab driver where we were going and told him it should be X Street. He said, "That's not where he told me to go," and creepy guy casually states that he was taking us back to his tent. We definitely did not want to go back to his tent. We told the driver this and asked him to take us where we wanted to go. Thankfully, he complied. Even creepier, the guy laughs and says to the driver, "Think what we could do with these girls." At this point, we have stopped laughing and are quite scared. It didn't help that he was squished in the back seat with us and had an arm around my friend. He carried on making creepy jokes, and a few minutes before we pulled up, he went straight in and tried to kiss my friend. She kindly told him to F off, and thankfully, we had arrived, so we jumped out. We had no idea where on the street the original group were heading, but luckily a nice and normal guy we had been talking to was standing on the corner where we pulled up. He felt really bad when we told him and apologized for leaving us with him. The guy followed us to the next place and tried to talk to us again. He said he didn't understand why my friend was angry and couldn't understand what we were saying. He eventually left. We dealt with this situation by doing what we do best and laughed about it. For the rest of the holiday, we called our hostel our tent. It's not until we looked back that we realized what a dangerous situation we'd put ourselves in, and how worse it could have been if we had gotten out of that cab in a strange place, or if we had an equally creepy driver.